But for now, what it's time to do, and what I'm very, very excited to do, is introduce Congressman Robert Bobby Scott, a Democrat from Virginia's 3rd District. And what I'm really excited to tell you is that Congressman Scott is the leading protector of the Establishment Clause on Capitol Hill. We owe him big time. So it's very, very exciting to have him here today. Representative Scott made history when he was elected because he was the first African American elected to Congress from the Commonwealth of Virginia since Reconstruction. I want to let that sink in for a second, since Reconstruction, and the second in all of Virginia's history. Congressman Scott serves on the Committee of the Judiciary, where he's the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, Homeland Security, and Investigations, and a member of the Subcommittee on the Constitution and Civil Justice. After serving for almost 20 years, he has come to be known as a champion of the Constitution, fighting to protect the civil liberties of all Americans. And it's our distinct pleasure this morning to welcome Virginia Congressman Robert C. Bobby Scott.
Very kind introduction, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here. As a representative of Virginia, we take great pride in Thomas Jefferson and his insistence of religious liberty so that people could believe what they wanted to, and that the government should not intrude into people's beliefs. The First Amendment is under attack right now. There's been a fairly constant line between church and state for the last many years, particularly the last 50 years. It's been a fairly consistent line, and the court cases have been fairly consistent. There is, in the last few years, an attempt to kind of move the line and change things. The Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause of the Constitution kind of work together. Sometimes there's conflict and you have to figure out which is which. But when you talk about free exercise, that means that when you talk about the Establishment Clause, it means the government cannot favor religion over non-religion or one religion over another religion. And that's been fairly consistent over the years. The area where you see the most confusion over the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause has been in school prayer. And it is a fairly simple analysis when you understand both clauses. Because people say, well, if I can't corral take over the cafeteria and make everybody participate in my prayer, you are affecting my free exercise. Wrong. It says that's the Establishment Clause. You cannot establish a prayer. You can't start the class every day with devotions, as they did when I was in elementary school. We started with devotions, sing holy, 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 and all that stuff. And somebody figured, well, wait a minute, that's a violation of the Establishment Clause. You can't have a government prayer. You can't have government-sanctioned, government-organized prayer. That's a violation of the Establishment Clause. But you also have the Free Exercise Clause. That you cannot prevent me from saying grace over my food. You can't prevent me from having a prayer before my math test. That's free exercise. Yeah. And it is a fairly simple analysis when you can understand the two, and people really confuse the two, acting as if any restriction on my ability to impose my religion on you is a violation of free exercise, when it's a fairly straightforward violation of the Establishment Clause. Now, the most recent problem we have in this area, in the area of government intervention and religion, I think, has been the so-called faith-based initiative. If you boil it down, the faith-based initiative, the only thing it does is allow you, it allows you to get federal money and discriminate based on religion.
Yes.
Put up a sign, we don't hire Catholics, Jews, and Muslims. Now, they say they do it on a case-by-case basis, which means if you put up the sign, you're not going to get the money. But if you just discriminate discreetly, then you can get the money. The Civil Rights Act in 1964 allowed churches and religious groups with money raised for the religious purpose to do what they wanted to, discriminate based on religion. If you're hiring a minister, if the church is hiring employees, they're exempt from the discrimination based on religion. It was raised for that purpose, and you can see a reason for that. If you are participating in the religion, you have to know what the religion is. If, on the other hand, you get federal money to run a federal program, I think they have finally given up on the idea that you can run a religious program with federal money. If it is a secular program with the federal money, then you don't need to know the religion, and there is no basis for the discrimination. There are other problems with this, and that is, what do you tell a devoutly religious businessman next door to one of these programs who would like to start the business day with prayers and everything and would like to hire just people of his religion? What do you tell him when you got a government program only hiring people of one religion? I mean, you really lose your moral authority to have any civil rights laws if you're allowing discrimination with the federal money. And a lot of us have been very disappointed when this thing started in about 2001, and just disgusted that it hadn't been fixed.
Right.
We need with federal money and in Johnson's 1965 executive order, you had all the kind of laws and everything fixed together, but if you get federal money, you ought not discriminate based on religion, race, or anything else. And we need to repeal that part of the faith-based initiative. Faith-based groups can get the money, but they ought not discriminate with it when they get it. And we've been working to try to fix that. Unfortunately, we haven't had much success. Let me mention just one other area, and that is what's going on in the Affordable Care Act. There's this idea that corporations can decide in free exercise not to cover certain things because their religion doesn't allow it, and if their employees get access to certain things, they feel that's a violation of their religious rights. And the issue has been joined on contraception. It's an interesting issue because whoever's making I think the plaintiff in one of the cases, they looked up and their own policy included, guess what, contraceptive coverage. You can't make this stuff up. And if you look at some of the churches trying to make this argument, 99% of the women in their own church are using contraception. So people in own church are listening to that. But the more important thing is not just contraception, but if you allow, you said when you start talking about Constitution, you start talking about principles. If you allow the employer to decide what kind of coverage people get based on religion, contraception is one. How about some religions don't believe in blood transfusions?
Right.
Where you can have a policy that doesn't include blood transfusions because the employer doesn't like that. How about others, Christian Zionists, don't believe in medicine? Where you can have a policy. We certainly hope that the Supreme Court is expected to rule in the next few days. They end the term at the end of the month, and they're expected to decide this term. So you're talking the next couple of days that they're going to have a decision. If they decide that they can do this, they will just open the door to all kinds of confusion, and we'll just have to see what happens. But I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here and make a few comments. Want to keep up the good work, because religious freedom, as I said, as a Virginian, is extremely high ideal, and we're not going to enjoy that freedom by accident. It's going to take people lobbying and making sure that every time somebody tries to intrude, we have something to say. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Questions. And I think Sarah's coming around with the microphone.
Thanks for being here, Congressman. You mentioned people's confusion about school prayer and things in general. I work with high school students, and I just wondered, what have you found the most effective way to educate people about the difference between the Establishment Clause, but also their freedom to personally express their religion within the school system?
Well,
do you have any tips or tricks?
I think if you explain it to them, I mean, they tend to get it, because they say we've taken prayer out of the school, and the rhetoric gets way past the reality. What we have taken out of the school is the school board's ability to make people join into a school board approved prayer. They say, well, we won't be school board of prayer. Let's let the students. Let's let the students decide. I think they've decided that's not a good idea. The individual teacher, that's just an extension of the school board. You know, when you tell them that, when you explain the free exercise clause to them, that you can, and some have restricted, some have tried to restrict a person's ability to say grace over their food. You have to explain to them, no, that's free exercise. And once you make that clear, that you have the absolute right to say whatever prayer you want, then I think people tend to get it. But like I said, there are a lot that believe that if you restrict their right to impose their religion on people, that is a restriction on free exercise. That's just not the case.
There's other areas of the Constitution under attack that affect us as well. You know, the NSA spying limits our ability to organize and really, you know, choose strategies and things. And on the other side, government transparency seems to be on the way down, which also limits us. I'd be interested in your comments.
Well, I thought that was a statement, not a question. We've had trouble getting on the NSA spying. Part of the problem there is that the intelligence community, I mean, when we saw the director famously just straight up lie when Senator Wyden asked him a specific question. He just lied. What's he doing now? He's still there. How do you just lie? I've tried to get straight answers out of these guys. You just can't get a straight answer out of them. You know, it's disappointing. We do the best we can. It's kind of hard to have oversight, congressional oversight. The people just don't tell you the truth. They make up stuff like tell you that Congress has been informed of certain things. There's a concept in law called document dump, where they subpoena information, and you got to give it up. So what you do is you put it in a box of documents and send the whole documents over there and hope they never get to it. Hope they never see it. A lot of these, we have informed Congress, have come in either document dumps or classified communications where the member has to personally go over and read all the stuff, and it's there, but it's just, you know, a bunch of stuff. We may never get to it, and we may never know what we're looking for. What usually happens is the staff goes through it and points out the 2 or 3 pages that you need to read. Well, if they've given you a document dump, you know, you never know that. But I've tried to get straight answers out of the people, and it's, you know, we have 5 minutes to get to question, and they take 5 minutes to give a non-answer, and it's been frustrating.
I realize this is a state-by-state thing, but the school voucher situation, Indiana, I'm from Indiana. Indiana has one of the biggest ones in this nation, where the money is going, about 97% of the schools are religious, where if a student goes there on voucher money, they have to take the religion courses as well. I've heard this straight from a Catholic priest in the legislature. Is there anything at the federal level that they're doing that might help stop some of this from happening in the states?
The Supreme Court ruled on the Ohio voucher situation where 99% of the money went to in that area to Catholic schools. They ruled that the decision to use the voucher for the religious school was a choice by the parent, not the state.
Yeah, this is the way they want it.
And they said the fact that 99% of the vouchers in, I think it was Cleveland, were going to religious schools, the statewide voucher program can't be illegal in Cleveland and legal in Cincinnati, where you have, you know, a bona fide choice. You know, if the parent decides to send the school, I mean, you can get a Pell Grant to go to Notre Dame. But that's the choice. That's not an establishment clause. That's free exercise. You have the right to go to the high school of your choice. So I'm not sure there's much from a federal level that we can do on that.
Good morning. I sometimes find it hard to make the argument about separation of church and state when the House and the Senate both provide the models and examples of a chaplain hired with government money and the prayers every morning. So is there any way that we can overcome that, or do we have to just join in and look to have some secular prayers or something every day?
The recent case was somewhat convoluted where they ruled. There's this thing called ceremonial religion, where it's not like it's anybody believes that nobody's going to convert or be one way or the other. It's just a kind of ceremonial kind of thing that creates an aura of seriousness, and yeah, you know, we've been doing it so long that the Supreme Court says that if you do it, the prayer should be as broad as possible. If you're doing it every day, you ought to do it from various different perspectives. Yeah, it is in fact a conflict, but you know, you look at your money is God, in God we trust. I mean, nobody's going to take the money and not take the money based on their religious beliefs. We've just had this ceremonial kind of thing so long that I'm not sure there's much we can do about it.
Congressman, so atheists face a real public relations problem. They're discriminated against. If they're out in the open about their non-belief, they can be ousted from a job, they can lose a business, they can lose their community. So I guess I'm asking you, how would you address this discrimination, and how would you help us to get more broadly accepted in American society?
Well, if you are discriminated against in employment, the Title VII applies. I mean, the laws against firing somebody because of their religious beliefs. So, I mean, you can't make people, you can't change their minds, but you can pass a law to make it illegal. And so if there's a case where somebody, Title VII doesn't cover everybody, but most employment situations are covered. So I mean, it's employment discrimination. We've been joined by Zoe Lofgren from California, my colleague of the Judiciary Committee. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here.